Welcome, Anil ji. He is one of the most respected veteran journalists in contemporary media in India. Nowadays, he goes by the name or the moniker of Capital Calculus. He has a wonderful content page on Substack, and he does a weekly show also for Stratford Times. He's been a journalist who has worked in India and the United States too. So, Anil, I wanted just to ask you and start with one simple question. Do you think India is a data deficient country?
No, Sutanu, anyway, thanks for having me. I don't agree. I think it is what Nandan very aptly summed that Indians are data rich but economically poor. So if particularly in the new digital economy, it is capturing such vast reams of data. And to give you a few examples, look at Zomato. If you look at their annual report, you'll get to know the culinary preferences of India. So I was very
Okay.
surprised that I discovered Gurgaon is the healthiest eating city in the country. It's actually the salad capital. So
Quite surprising.
exactly. So data doesn't lie. So it's what they shared, and I trust them. The other is, the economic survey. If you recall, a few years ago, this they had mapped railway passenger data
Data.
to actually tell the migration story. So, there are tons of data out there, and the new digital economy is churning out in millions. I mean, if as long as we have guardrails for privacy, that data is right out there for use. So, I don't think we are data poor by any chance.
But there are some guys who complain that government data, like NCRB on crime, like the census has been delayed, like even the GDP quarterly figures come really after 2 months, inflation figures come after 20 days. Is that a problem, or you think that's all right?
No, 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 no. That's a huge problem. See, let's separate two, three things here. One, there is a legacy problem here. We had a great start under Mahalanobis when the whole
True.
Indian statistical systems were created. But since then, we have lost momentum and it has allowed to be vegetated. So I'm sure you remember, and I remember in our era as younger journalists, we had to go to various libraries and look through dust ridden
True.
files and
True.
manually copy down. Okay, so that has been fixed digitally, but issue is the quality of the data has not been fixed. And to add to the problem, I mean, one of neglect is the complexity of India. See,
True.
in the 80s, India was probably 100 billion or 200 billion economy. Today, it's almost a 3 trillion economy.
Brilliant.
And, we didn't have things like online, internet didn't exist, mobile telephony didn't exist, the kind of stuff we see around us. I mean, delivery didn't exist,
Exist.
the public hail cabs didn't exist. So, you see the complexity of India, which has grown. One, there's neglect has added to the problem. Second is this complexity. And to conclude, I think you're spot on. This kind of data, it's a miracle that our macro planners actually get it right. So RBI is literally flying blind when they're talking about making a monetary policy call. It's really, really sad that, which is why if you notice, RBI has branched off about 5, 7 years ago, and they have their own proxy set of data which they track. So because they
True.
don't rely only on official data, or say
True.
the union budget is placed on data, which you said rightly said 2 months lag. So the FM makes a presentation on February 1. That data is of December, of
True.
the previous year. So, and in a fluid situation like what we have seen in the last 5 years, every quarter is a new story. I mean, it's almost like a new year. So
True.
imagine uh, being a macroeconomic cop in these times, very tough. Yes, data has to be fixed.
So, Anil, policymakers do face a challenge with data, as you pointed out in detail. But I wanted to add a question here. Apart from policymakers, the media plays a very, very big role in delivering information which contains credible data. Do you think Indian media still shies away from using numbers and data when delivering content?
That is yes and no. Uh, the thing is that apologies, there's some festivity happening around me, so you'll hear some loud music,
Oh, no
and I
problem, no
guess
problem.
it's Independence Day celebrations happening ahead of the clock. So the thing is that when you look at, you see, it is not that I won't paint all of Indian media with the same brush. Yes, most of Indian media still does not use data. I mean, they use very cursory data. It's not that they don't use data. But I think your question is more about the kind of things we discussed. Do they use that detail and that depth? No. And which is actually which is peculiar because some of the newsrooms, even I was fortunate enough to work with some of them, they are amazingly, they have created data science teams and they have packed them with extremely brilliant people. But unfortunately, what I noticed was not just with them, but with other newsrooms too, these guys write for each other. They don't write for the general public. It's like, academics writing academic papers which only they can understand. So which is sad because you're in a newspaper setup for a reason. You're there to communicate with the public, not to communicate with each other. In that case, you should move on to academics. So I blame it on leadership. I think the editors of today is a different story. We should have a separate conversation on that. I'm sure you have equally strong views. So I
True,
blame it
true.
on the leadership because these are extremely brilliant guys. And if you just guide them and handhold them a bit and tell them these little fun stories like Zomato and migration, they will take to it. The problem is not that, so then it becomes an incestuous cabal and it starts, they circulate to each other and then they go on social media, pat each other on the back, and they feel they've done a great job. But I worry we exist as news people for readers. We don't exist for anybody else. So,
True,
yes, so that's my
true,
long answer.
true, true. So, Anil, to just give you one example, we have a lot of data on unemployment. Most of it comes from CMIE. And we also rely on NREGA, number of people who have applied, the funds allocated and actually distributed over the year. So, do you think there is cherry picking? For instance, the moment NREGA allocations go up, we have stories in the media that unemployment is a huge problem in India. I mean, it is a problem, but is it wise to link them?
No, you see, Sutanu, this is where I think you have hit the nail on the head. Uh, with news reporting, and there is in any news setup, you have news and you have views, right? You have worked in a news setup, so you know that. And there is a conventional Chinese wall between the two. So, views should not permeate to news. News can permeate to views, but not the other way around, because
True.
the views will take off from the news cycle. But this is where it is not just about, if you look at electronic media, they have taken the lead in completely collapsing this distinction and becoming actually opinion givers rather than leaving it to public to think. Because in my entire career, I have always believed that the one person smarter than me is my reader, him or her. They are light streets ahead of us. If you like to talk to an ISRO scientist, are you going to compete with that knowledge quotient? You won't. We are just journalists, and I think we should stick to that. So if I'm reporting, same thing with data. So if you have a preconceived notion and I'm trying to fit that data, then you're as bad as the government of India or some private sector company which is distorting data to tell stories. I think it's fine for the government to sell that story. It's fine for the companies. I mean, I don't justify it, but I'm saying I can understand where they come from. But for a newspaper to, or a not newspaper, news organization to do that is a crime. Which is why I said leadership matters. See, these are first principles. You have to tell your teams these when they are brought on board because many of these guys have not been journalists. So you see, they don't know the rules of the game. So maybe because they're not inherently bad people. Then they see something happening, they follow that template, then they get into that trap, then you never get out of it. Then you start, probably the editor gives them a message. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I have no idea because
True.
I certainly wouldn't send a message to a team that look, I've got this conclusion. I need you to get data for that. That I mean, I wouldn't do that, but I don't know. I'm just trying to say because I have seen these people. They're bright. I think they're misguided, and this kind of bias is a complete no-no because you're losing trust. See, our whole business of news depends on trust. While remember the wolf story. So you lie once, lie twice, third time you'll fail. So same way, you can't fool people all the time.
True. And one last question, Anil. You've already pointed out how leadership plays a critical role in this. What else can you think of where the quality of data journalism will improve in India, because it's very critical, not just for unemployment, for inflation, for livelihoods, for poverty, for nutrition, for everything.
Um, I really don't have a generic solution, but I can, make some suggestions because see, it has to be, it's relative to any situation. So depends on the teams you run, the what you want to do. If you are only playing with numbers or it is part of a new setup. So for me, if I was to advise a team, I would say follow first principles of news, the news reporting, not the views. News reporting has a very simple paradigm. It's like a pyramid structure. What is the news, how is the news, and why is the news. That's it. So if you tell the how and why of the data, leave it to the reader. They are supremely smart. Like I said, they think streets ahead of us. So do not think for anyone else. Just report the facts and tell it in a structured manner, which is our job. We are very, our skill set is curating. So our curation skills you should take to your reader and let them decide whichever way they want. Second, I would say end these Chinese walls in the newsroom, not in views and news, but between the news and the people who make the graphics. We have somehow got this class problem in a newsroom that the graphics guy is of an inferior class and the
Class.
journalist of a superior class. Yeah, that's all rubbish, because those guys' skill sets are tremendous. Now
They do a better job,
you're,
in fact.
ah,
They do a
exactly. You're not
better job.
optimizing. You see, the whole thing, like I said, if you keep your reader in mind, I'm optimizing for the reader. So whether, Sutanu is the graphic, or say Sutanu is the journalist and Anil is the graphics guy. Now Sutanu feels, he has to look down on Anil. You're not going to get the best out of me. But if you involve me and as an equal, I will be equal participant in the process. So, one end is Chinese wall. They should sit together because now these are no longer linear graphics that you see in papers and magazines. These are now serious motion graphics and all based on coding. And there is no, so which means even your tech guy should sit there, or these guys
True.
have to acquire that skill. Third, I would say invest in training, because how many newsrooms invest in training? These people have to be trained because I'll tell you why. The whole tech business is constantly changing. It's like running on sand. Okay, no matter how fast you run, you can't get momentum because things below are changing so fast. So, which means you need to constantly train, and there are a lot of people out there doing a lot of work. I'm not saying you send people to New York and all that. You could if you can afford it, but even webinars, pay for it. There are courses conducted by institutions, by individuals. Forget institutions. I would look at individuals. Some very
True.
smart people are out there who can train your teams. And they'll do it online. There's the cost involved. So train your people. Secondly, I think a lot of stuff is available on plug and play now. I use them now because I just
True.
started doing some graphics. So you have things like Canva, you have Data Wrapper. These are extremely user friendly. So encourage people in your newsroom to do it. And finally, stop trying to replicate the print version online. See, the mistake we are making is, if you remember the original online which came around the millennium was to take the PDF version of the paper and paste it on the grid, right?
Post it. Huh?
But then, right? And now it has changed. It has now become more internet, but now what has happened is become clickbait journalism. So you'll find only Bollywood among the top 10 stories of average top 5 newspaper sites in the country. I take a bet on it. They will be all Bollywood stories because they are
You are
running
right.
after after running after clickbait stuff. But that is where graphics matters. If you have good content and you tell a graphic story in a motion graphics or it's like a flow chart or something, you'll get the reader attention. They'll get excited about it, and they'll invest in the story. So you
True.
see, we look at New York Times. Why are you looking at New York Times? You can do it here. You see, this is not the art of storytelling is ancient in India.
India.
So, the hieroglyphics was invented in West Asia, and then the visual storytelling came here. So
Yeah.
it's not something alien to us. It's a question of how you do it. And also, I would say invest in the younger people because online is again a system of moving goalposts. So there is no template. See, in a print thing, you can decide, okay, this page has this theme, this page has that theme, falana, sports page, news page. Online, nothing of that sort works.
Digital
Nobody
is
comes in there,
infinite. It's infinite. You
uh,
can do
and
anything.
nobody comes in with a modular view. But you need to curate the news. So when you're curating, you need young thinkers who are actually engaged digital natives who are like born on Instagram, etc. So I mean, if you encourage them, they will come in with good skill sets, but you need to empower them. You can't be talking
True.
down to them because they need to be there. Like I said, we need to equalize our newsrooms. I'll stop at
True.
that.
True. Thank you so much, Anil. And let's hope we have another conversation very shortly, within a few weeks or month. Thank you so much, Anil. Thanks again.
Happy to do that. Thank you, Sutan.
Thank you.